This is a 700C gravel wheel. This is a 750D gravel wheel. And this is Johs Huseby, Director of Global OEM Sales and Product Vision at WTB, which is making these, for now, prototype wheels and tires. How are you, Jos? Good to see you.
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
So we're talking about a few things today. This 750D is many things. It's been a source of great angst and frustration on the internet, which we'll get into, but is also a project that you've been working on for a while, that WTB has been working on for a while. And so that's what this video is about. It's talking about, the practical implications for something like this, and then the more theoretical, conceptual, like, hey, what if we did something a little bit different? And those are both very real things as writers. There's how something could be ideally constructed for each of us individually, and then there's the more day-to-day, like, how does it all come together? And then lastly, wheels and tires only work if they go on bicycles. So that's obviously a part of it. That's a consideration for you as a writer. That's a consideration for brands, for bike brands too. Like, do we have parts, and do we as the bike community have enough agreements to go for another size? So I'll stop yapping and let you do some of the talking. But first off, how long you've been working this, and what was the idea of trying something different for gravel?
So Mark Slate, who's one of the founders of WTB and definitely one of the creators of many products for WTB over our more than 40 years, came up with this concept about 5 years ago. And we have been experimenting with it. We've been working with a number of testers all over the world, actually, in trying these on different bikes that do fit them. Right now, it's very much still in a prototype stage. We don't have any customers that have committed to them, but it's full-on experimentation at this point.
Yeah. So let's talk numbers and letters, just for basic reference. So 700C is a commonly used thing, but maybe not a commonly understood thing, right? What's a C? Like, it's not an actual measurement, it's just a number. So we talk about 650B wheels, which are smaller, 650C, which is a little bit taller, and then 750D larger. But a 700C wheel is, the bead diameter is 622 millimeters.
Correct. And 650B is 584, and then 750D is 660. So you actually have equal size delineations of 38 millimeters from that 27.5 or 650B to the 700C to the 750D.
Mm-hmm. Some people talk about tires measuring in C. That's nonsense. Like a 25C or 25 or 28C. It's millimeters. When you're measuring this way, that's
it's always millimeters.
650B wheels exist on some. We're kind of average guys, right? Like, I ride a 56 centimeter bike. Most bikes fit me well. I seldom get to overlap. There's one bike in the garage now, a test bike that's in a new Trek Madone that's got, Trek's race bikes are really short, and I get to overlap. I almost knock myself over a couple times just doing some photos on Flagstaff riding slowly. Toe overlap sucks. And for smaller riders, that's one reason why a 650B wheel is used, is that it's proportional, right?
Yep.
That's not usually, like I said, that's not usually something I have to think about, because bikes just work for me, because I'm kind of middle of the bell curve that way. Taller riders, I've seen a lot of comments. I posted a video on Instagram from Steamboat Gravel talking to John Caribou at Moots. Comment section blew up. A lot of it was just angst, like, we don't need another wheel size, this is terrible, I want to punch somebody in the face about this. Some larger riders piped in and saying, like, actually, something that's more proportional could be a positive thing. What are your thoughts there about this as an idea for all people across the board, or is it more towards larger people that that the thinking came
It
from?
wasn't created necessarily for larger people. However,
Yeah.
that is a great solution.
Yeah.
A number of brands that we've spoken to have thought about using 700C for their smaller sizes, and then using 750D for the larger sizes. However, Moots, for example, made this bike that some people have seen, and it's not a big bike. I think it's a 52 or maybe a 54, something like that. It all depends on the geo of the bike. Like this bike that we have behind us has a really long front center, and I typically ride somewhere between a 56 and a 58, but I have no toe overlap at all with this large wheel. Where if you got, and so if you kept that geometry even on a smaller size, you probably still could get away with no overlap, depending on, again, what the trail of the fork is, and what the front center is like.
Let's talk about the practical applications of existing standards, and then the more wide open pie in the sky stuff. So currently, could you just put a 750D wheel on a 700C bike?
Probably not. It really depends on what the clearance is. If it's, what I can say is the outside diameter of these tires right here is, I believe, 751 millimeters, and that's the same as a 29 by 2.4 tire on like a 29 millimeter internal rim. So a lot of modern day mountain bikes, this wheel set would work on, and I'll say that's how a number of brands have tested this so far. We did make some of these frames like you see here as just some mules to test out the wheel size, because we just wanted to make sure we built a bike kind of specifically for this wheel size. However, there definitely are bikes out there that will fit with this gravel tire. That's a 40 millimeter tire.
So realistically though, the only way this would get traction, excuse the pun, is if bike brands bought into it and made bikes for it. Like you can't take a 26-inch mountain bike frame and throw on 29-inch tires. Like that would take a whole shift of the industry, which is part of why like some of the angry comments were not just riders, but bike shop owners or bike shop employees just being like, oh no, we've already got way too many SKUs. This is just too much. So that's part of it. So in order for it to get traction, bike brands would have to buy in. Before it gets to the point of like, does a everyday rider want to buy it? There's got to be a bike to go on it. I'm guessing you're going to be cagey about this answer, but which brands have you been talking to? You said brands are experimenting with trying it with like mountain bike frames and such. Who are you dating? Who are you talking to? Who's in your DMs right now?
There's all sorts of people, brands that we're talking to, but I really don't feel like that's my place to share that information.
Yeah.
There's some brands that are particularly interested. There's other brands that have experimented with it and it's not for them.
Yep.
Yeah, that's not really for me to talk about.
Figured as much, but it's my job to ask.
Yeah.
Another question that has to be asked is like, why not just ride a mountain bike, brah? Why, if the tire and the wheel is going to get this big, why not just a 29-inch mountain bike?
You can make a wheel set and tire a lot lighter in this application. Plus, we think that for gravel and for drop bar bikes in general, this is a really good solution. The 700C size has not really been, there hasn't been much change in that realm. In road racing, that size has been around for a really long time. And then just in drop bar bikes in general, yes, you have some 650B here and there, but realistically 700C dominates. And so the way we look at it is there are some real benefits to a slightly larger wheel size in terms of momentum and carrying speed over the course of a certain distance. And I think somebody commented about how on the track this could be a real benefit, similar to riding a fixed gear bike where you have momentum from the wheels going around. It's same with this where you have a slightly larger wheel.
Mm-hmm. was speaking to Tiffany Cromwell, the Canyon SRAM racer, races obviously high-level road, World Tour, Tour de France, etc. Also does quite well in gravel. The sponsored by Canyon, obviously the Canyon Grail in the smaller sizes has a 650B wheel, and she can feel and appreciate the difference of going to a bigger wheel for. She feels like it's faster is the short of it, and she's like right on the cusp of that. And again, I don't think I've ever ridden a 650B road bike because like that doesn't make sense proportionally.
Right.
Yeah, somebody with a garage full of test bikes that are all this size. Yeah, there's definitely a part of me that can associate with the comments of like, no, don't change. It's like going from a rim brake bike to disc brake bike. Like that would entail a lot of change. It would be a big change for lots of folks.
Absolutely. And again, this is, it's why it's still in the stage where we are experimenting and trying to figure out if, this could stick. We don't think it's going to revolutionize the industry in any way, but it could be something where it is appropriate for larger bikes. Mm-hmm. It could be something that, as more testing is done, people realize that it is faster over a longer distance. Mm-hmm. And there are some real benefits when you ride the bike. So I'm excited to see what you think when you actually get out on it.
Yeah. So for the record, Johs is lending me this bike to go ride around on, and I think I'll just make that a separate video. Like this would be a good chunk in and of itself, and then I'll spend some time on this and come back with my half-baked opinions on how the thing feels. So you can look out for that. But in the meantime, you tell me how this has felt. Like what types of situations do you notice it being the biggest difference? Like what's it been like to ride this thing?
So I've ridden this bike a lot. For 1 year, it was probably 3 or 4 years ago, I rode it kind of exclusively for a couple months to really get a great feel for it. And I took it on all sorts of group rides and gravel rides and single track and all different conditions to kind of see where I felt like it performed. Or how it could perform, I guess, compared to a 700C bike. Mm-hmm. And I think the things that I really noticed is the traction is incredible. You have a longer contact patch, so you really notice that.
So like there's just more of this
correct.
On the ground?
Yes.
So in this direction, not necessarily in
correct.
That direction.
Yep. And you also notice the stability because of the momentum and the fact that the wheel is larger. You notice how well it tracks. I mean, it tracks exceptionally well. Mm-hmm. Like when you're ripping down a descent, I took it down Lick Skillet, as you probably know, and
steepest county road in North America.
And it was super impressive with how the bike was tracking. I really noticed that. Not that 700C bikes are twitchy necessarily, but you just feel how much more stable this is. Mm-hmm. It really holds the line really well. But it still handles well if you're navigating a single track trail. It's actually pretty nice on trails as well, because you are getting that extra traction. You notice that.
How many different tire widths and treads have you played with, and what's the process of creating prototype rubber? I can't imagine that's a cheaper and easy
That's
endeavor.
A very good question. Opening a mold for a tire is not an inexpensive operation, but that's what you have to do. So a prototype or production, you go through the same process. And then we also had to purchase a new building machine, which is actually much more expensive than a mold. And that is the machine where the tire is actually constructed before it goes into the mold. And So that is, it was a big investment on our part, and but again, we wanted to experiment with this and see where it goes.
So what are the tire widths you have now? I'm looking at a 400 by 750. That's the
40 millimeter.
40. Yeah,
yeah,
400.
Yeah,
400. A little wider.
Yeah. So the Nano
Yeah.
40 is, as a lot of people know, one of our popular gravel tires we've had for a long time.
Yeah.
And then we also have a 34 millimeter byway tire as well.
Okay.
So smooth down the middle with a little bit of tread on the side.
Guy Kesavan, legendary UK tech journalist, piped up that WTB was the first out of the gates with a 29-inch mountain bike tire. Is that true?
It is
Yeah.
true. We produced those years ago for Gary Fisher, and then WTB started making a lot of different tread patterns in 29-inch as well. And yeah, it was definitely a big change for the industry, and look where we are today. Virtually every mountain bike has 29-inch.
How analogous, if at all, do you think 700 to 750 is to a 26-inch to 29? Do you make some bold predictions here, Jos? Do you think we'd see that level, and a few years down the road, that level of adoption and change, or do you think this will be a smaller adoption, or is it still wait and see how the market and the industry and the riders respond?
I think it really comes down to the brands that we work with and see what the acceptance level is there. We have created this to see if it can be an option. We don't necessarily know yet whether we think that it's the ultimate solution or anything yet. So ultimately, right now, it's, like I said earlier, it's just in the experimentation stage. And again, we really need a brand to embrace it and feel like it works for what their direction is. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, if that doesn't happen, we understand that too. We didn't go into this working with somebody saying, okay, we want to do this, and will you create it for us? We created it and think that it's a good solution in a number of different avenues, but again, we don't necessarily think it's going to revolutionize the bike industry.
So to be continued. Thanks for the information here, and thanks for the opportunity to test the new wheel and tire standard. I'll be reporting back after a few rides on that. In the meantime, let me know what you think. I enjoy our conversation on this. We'll keep the chat going in the conversation below. Thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and whether you like 700 or 650 or the idea of 750B, enjoy the ride.